Hello YouTube, welcome back to a grey old day on Nutkin Farm. I'm in my spare paddock where we've slashed the second time in preparation for planting some new macadamia trees. These ones are variety R and a pollinizer variety 783. And you can see what we've done here. We've used builder's twine to mark the rows, and then I think this is a trick from Maddie Kelby. Maddie, thank you if it was you. We used lime to mark the holes where we're going to plant along the line. And the spacing of the rows, I've chosen 9 by 4. And so we've cleared the rows where we're going to plant. And now I'm going to show you some mechanical help, which is very exciting for me because I've always hand dug holes for macadamias. It's been miraculous exercise on my shoulders and arms and everything else, but with about 80 trees total to plant, I thought this time I might need a little professional help. Now, if you've ever watched the Ali G show and you're my vintage, you remember that when Ali G spoke to an expert about doing something dangerous, he reckoned he was always asking questions on behalf of a bloke called Dangerous Dave. Now, I've got my own Dangerous Dave. He's a family friend. He's on what's called a kanga. Now, this has been lent to me by one of my contractors. He's been very generous because he once came onto my farm and discovered me planting by hand, and I think felt sorry for me. Now, a kanga is, as I understand, an Australian machine, an Australian invention. It can have a couple of tools on the end of it, but at the moment what it's got on it is an auger which will drill holes for planting macadamias. It's stand-on, so there's no seat or anything. It works a bit like a zero-turn mower. It has 4 wheels and only really drives 2 of them, so it's a bit sort of deceptive, and we're not going to go all the way down this slope here because it's just too wet and I think it'll get out of control. But here's what we do. We lower the auger to the soil where we've marked it with lime, and we start drilling. Puts the auger in the hole. Now, the auger goes both directions. At the moment, we're trying to find the right spot for it to go in. Oh, we've run into a tree root or something. Okay. My sister's discovered a big tree root. We might drill next to it, Dave. Yeah. We'll get rid of the root later. Okay, so back to the demonstration. The auger is going into some pretty solid clay here. Don't underestimate how hard this job of digging is. Pretty good little diesel machine. And it's just tearing through the soil. I mean, for someone who manually dug these holes, this is like awesome to me. So you go down enough to plant a macadamia, you then lift the auger up, and there, one planting hole. The wonders of last century's technology are finally dawning on me. So there is a modern, low-volume way of planting macadamias, people. Obviously, the planting itself has to come, and if you're following the proper guides, you'll roughen up the side of the hole so that you don't have a perfectly circular hole to put your plants in. That auger is actually wider than it needs to be, but it'll be making some nice friable soil around the plant when I put it in, which is nice, and hoping to get some good results. The block soil seems fertile enough, but certainly in this wet weather you can see the clay components, and yeah, look, it's going to need a bit of help as the trees grow, but we've got some lovely trees to put in there, and I'll be showing them to you next. And we're back at the farmhouse now, where I've lined up the latest purchases for going into the spare block. And these are all variety R. and they're from Tim Hills's macadamia nursery, and we went and picked them up a couple of days ago from Dunoon, and I'm very, very happy with the quality of these trees. You can see that there's a nice big flush on a lot of them, which means they've had a recent growth spurt. They're all in hard plastic containers which have ribs down the side to discourage root twirling, that sort of thing. I was meant to pick them up in April, so if anything, they're a tiny bit sort of overgrown for the size, but you know, look, it's all the better for giving them a nice start in life. You can see where the grafts took place. That's the old, that dark part is the old grafting tape that you see there. And, you know, pretty much universally they've been trained to a single leader, and they're now, look, they're about 4 foot high. So really quite advanced specimens. And I could compare one of these, for example, with, I've still got a few of the $6 specials that I had that have been in bags probably for a couple of years. So put one, that's the R on the right, and then put that next to an 842 on the left. You know, you wouldn't believe that the R is only about a year old, including the rootstock, and yet the rootstock's just as thick almost as the as this 842 that's been there for ages. And so it's, you know, clearly a very well-growing tree. I asked Tim Hills about the variety R, and he's quite happy with them. They're quite a good, vigorous grower in the nursery. Of course, that doesn't mean anything much about the long-term viability of the tree, but he's now, I think, a little bit of a believer in variety R, which, you know, isn't one of the most ordered varieties, but I think particularly in view of the unstable climate we're facing, something with a reasonably thick husk and a medium shell is something that'll bode well for the future. Not a super large tree either, so it's something that you can plant in the long term without, you know, expecting pruning issues and canopy management issues too soon in its life. So those are the main trees that'll be planted in the spare paddock. We're doing grids of 9, so in the middle of the grid of 9 will be a pollinizer. That's variety 783. That's my own little contribution to macadamia science, because I thought I picked that as a very compatible variety to interplant these with. Although, you know, longer run, I might be using MCT1 for the pollinizer instead. Anyway, those are the trees that are going to be planted, and hopefully we're going to end up with a happy result. Let's see how they go into the ground. And so we're now back in the new paddock where we're lining up a couple of trees for planting. And just as a review of where we've got to, the Kanga dug these holes. You know, they're a bit wider than what the plant needs, just to give you an example there. But, you know, there's some decent root space for the plant to grow into. Got to rough up the side of the holes with a little bit of a spade so that they don't grow into that polished round hole, and treat it like it's just a larger form of pot. The ground's still fairly wet. We've got some sunny weather coming up, and it's going to be decent, if not hot, planting weather for the coming season. And yeah, the spacings are pretty reliably 9x4. Now, just on that topic, I had plenty of discussions with people about what row spacing to adopt and what is the new normal, if you like. I think, you know, Garth once said you could get 10 different macadamia farmers into a room and get 10 different answers about what the right spacing was. If you're planting a macadamia farm yourself and you've got an eye toward the future, then it's a question that will come up, and it's a very critical question longer term. Short term, it actually doesn't matter very much because the trees don't grow wide enough to shade each other out. So why 9x4? Well, certainly the reasoning, I think, from Robbie Commons, who was formerly an AMS executive, he did his own farm 9x4 because he looked at the farm machinery coming out in Europe and America for a lot of tree-based crops, and it seemed that things like slashers, mowers, other sorts of things were being developed for a 9-metre row spacing over there. I had other recommendations, including 10x3, which would be a slightly wider row than this, but obviously closer tree spacing. I'm not convinced by close spacing within a row. I still think when two trees collide with each other in terms of branches, yes, they might grow out into the row, which is what a 10x3 spacing is designed to do. It says, find space in the row that'll grow sideways instead of up. I still think it'll grow up as well. And so 4 metres between the trees to me is probably a little bit safer. Why don't I go 10 metres width? Well, look, I could. It's just that these new varieties of tree, like variety R here, don't grow super big. They're not tiny either, but R, P, MCT1, A447, A538, A376 even, these are new varieties that don't grow huge even over time, and it just seems to me that a 10-metre row spacing is probably good for some of the older varieties people plant, but it's probably not needed for the new varieties, and it does eventually affect your numbers. I mean, a 10 by 3 metre spacing is 300 trees a hectare. That's a nice solid planting, but you may run into other management issues as the trunks grow bigger and the trees sort of mesh together. So that's the best possible spacing I have devised for this particular paddock. I may be right, I may be wrong. Chances are I'll be dead before someone else regrets my decision or praises me for it. So it's a matter of doing what will do well for me in the time I plan to be a macadamia farmer, which is hopefully until a very old age. Now, back to the old stuff that I have been used to planting with. We've got Osmocote for the planting hole. We've got water crystals to help retain water. Although, being a very wet patch, you'd wonder whether they're really needed for this particular planting. Others, Maddie Kelby has told me that, they don't seem to persist in the soil for the two or so years that they're advertised to, but I'm going to stick with them anyway. And the other thing for the planting hole is this Organic Life, which is a nice pelletized chook manure based food with a lot of good things for young trees, including sulfate of potash in small enough quantities so that it won't burn roots. You can actually literally mix that in with the roots of the trees as you plant them. So that's my tonic for the planting holes, and that's what'll be going in with these particular trees. Certainly the other trees I've planted with this method have gone well, but by all means look at other episodes of the macadamia show. There's the Kelby method, which is a very much more advanced method than mine, and with a very high success rate. I can commend that to you if you happen to have a very powerful drill and a paint stirrer. But that's not what I've got available at this moment, and I'm just going to be a bit more conventional and manual. So off goes the planting exercise. I'm doing it in the most beautiful of circumstances. As you can see, there's a lovely view, literally 360 degrees around me, and I'm going to say, despite the heavy work that's involved, I am genuinely going to have fun. So I'll show you at the other end what it looks like. And here we are at the end of a long few days, and as promised, here is the finished product. All of these macadamia R's are now planted in rows along where we marked the holes. The ones we could dig with a kanga we did. Others I dug manually, but they're all in there now, and there's just a little bit of cleanup left to do. Now here's the grid of 9 idea. With the polliniser trees, the 783s haven't arrived yet, but we plant them in the middle of 9, and so if I stand here and turn all the way around, every single variety R is next to or adjacent to, diagonally or straight across, a 783. And I mean, obviously that's in the future when they start flowering and cropping. I picked the 783 because it was a variety that dropped its nuts late. It seems to flower at the same time as variety R, although that's going to be proof in the pudding. And is also, you know, it was quite a promising tree when it was tested. It had very good tolerance of husk spot, and was quite a heavy cropper. Only rejected by the industry because it dropped late. But now the variety R drops late as well, and this will be a late dropping block. I'm happy with the outcome. The trees look wonderful in the ground. Thank you, Tim Hills, for supplying them. And we'll see once the pollinisers go in. Might do a little update for you and show you what's going on there. So thanks for coming with me on the planting journey for what will probably become known as Block 8 on my farm. And the variety R's will go into the mix and certainly into the contest for the baby of the year roundup that I do at closer to the end of each year. I'll be back again soon with another video. You enjoy yourselves. Bye for now.